NT folder, and then in the NT directory service, NTDS folder. Okay, and here we see it right here, ntds.dit. This is the name of the Active Directory database file. This is one thing you should check for just to make sure that it is present, just located on the computer itself. Next thing I'm going to look at is the sysval folder, make sure that that's currently there. Here's our sysval folder we were discussing before. And I'm going to give you a brief little demonstration of how this works. I told you, recall, that the sysval folder is automatically set up and configured to replicate across the network without us doing anything at all. So if I were to, let's say, place a file someplace inside here, we're just going to throw one inside the scripts folder. And we'll name it test. This should replicate over to the sysval folder on SRV1, which makes this file available to anybody no matter whether or not they're logging onto domain controller SRV1 or SRV11. Okay, so that's the main benefit to using the sysval folder, and we'll double check this replication here in a second. Okay, next thing we'll take a look at is, let's see if our Active Directory tools are functioning correctly. Okay, so one, we should have them, and two, when I open it up, shouldn't be any error messages or issues. Okay, and we see that we don't get any error messages so far. So we're going to go ahead and move forward here. Okay, and take a look at this. And what I want to show you a couple things about this Active Directory console itself, just some different odds and ends. This showcases our domain right here. You can tell this by the icon. Underneath the domain we see several different folder-like objects. Okay, and these are just that. Okay, these are folders. Okay, more specifically, I guess we could call them containers. This one here in particular, see that it has a little phone book on it, is considered an organizational unit. So it too is considered a container like these other objects, but this is also considered an organizational unit, which is going to have some precedence and make a difference when we get on to the next labs where we're talking about, group policy and delegation of administration. Now when you look at these different containers, the users container is where all of our users and most of our groups exist by default. You don't have to create users in the users container. I can create a new user in the computers container if I want to. Okay, it's not going to make a difference. And same thing for the computers. The computers do not have to be created with inside these containers. You can create the computers anywhere you want to. These are set up for migrations from, let's say, NT4 to Windows 2000. We need a default location to place all the users. Well, this users container here, this users folder, that's the place we've chosen. Okay, we're going to create a new user here. So let's go ahead and go up to the users container. And we're going to right click, go to new user. And we're going to stick with the user that we created in lab 1 here. So Ben Smith, username of, username of B Smith. Okay, notice what we have here. This is the Windows 2000 way of logging on. This is considered what we call a UPN. Okay, and this down here is a pre-Windows 2000 logon. Okay, the NetBIOS. If we use this one to log on, we're going to be actually specifying the name of the domain. Okay, so just a little bit different. We'll talk about these briefly in a upcoming lab. So I click next, next again, and finish. Okay, when I finish here, notice that my user Ben Smith appears down here within the Active Directory inside this users container. Okay, doesn't mean he has to stay there, but that's where we created him initially, and that's where we'd find him if we wanted to further manage that particular account. Okay, next thing we're going to do, we did this here on, let's take a look here, SRV11. So we're going to connect over to SRV1 now. So log back down to client 1. Now we're going to log on to SRV1. And let's take a look at a couple things over here. First things first, let's go make sure that our Active Directory database is here. We never checked that before. So WinNT, NTDS, ntds.dit. So that is indeed there. Next thing, let's check our sysfile folder, see if replication has taken place. There we have it. Okay, that test file, that generic little test we did replicate over. Okay, so we see that here in our scripts folder.